Data analytics, that seems to be a hot topic here in 2024. And in this new series, that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna build up and learn data analytics. And today, we're starting off with the basics of working with Pandas, as well as learning basic data filtering techniques. We're gonna do all this through interactive lessons that I've made for you guys, as well as interacting coding scenarios to take everything that you learn in the lesson and use it today in VS Code. Welcome back, guys, to the channel. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Code with Josh. For obvious reasons, I'm Josh, and I am stoked to have you guys here on the channel. If you guys are excited for this episode and this mini series on data analytics, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. That really does help me, a growing small channel, reach a larger audience around the world. Everything that I do here on the channel is meant to help you guys grow. So drop me a like, that really helps out. And as I mentioned, today's episode is the building blocks of Pandas. It's getting started with Pandas. So not only am I going to show you guys a brief intro to Pandas and what we need to get started, a few methods, a few functions, I'm also going to teach you guys data filtering and how you can filter out a massive data set and create new data frames that you can begin to work with. Guys, before I dive into the episode, all right, the links I have in the description, they are for you guys, okay? The first link in the description is my Python newsletter. I write weekly content, and I am starting a new series on data analytics this week surrounding that. Whenever you're watching this, it'll still be out on my newsletter. All right, so first link in the description, and then all the other links down there, well, they're all resources to help you guys grow in your Python journey. All right, so enough chit chat. This is the first episode in this new series. Drop me a comment and let me know specifically what areas of data analytics you guys would like to work with. And I'm more than happy to cover that at a later stage in another video. All right, this is just the first part of that mini series. Without further ado, let's dive into why you're all here. Let's get into the lesson. Welcome, guys. Here we are to my part one and the intro to data analytics. This is a mini series that I'm putting together for you guys here on the channel. Now, I know how complicated Pandas can be, especially with like learning the syntax and what's happening behind the scenes with filtering, grouping, and more advanced topics. So in this part one of the series, I just want to introduce you to Pandas, some basic utilities we have, as well introducing you guys to filtering with Pandas. And I've broken this into two parts. The first part is just the initial introduction with some functions to help you explore your data. And then I'm going to take you guys right into filtering. All right. So let's talk about Pandas a little bit here. And now we're introduced to two new things. So we have a data frame and a series. Now, we've all worked with spreadsheets, so Google Sheets or Excel, and that's the best way to visualize Pandas or the data you're working with, because chances are you're working with a CSV file, which I'm going to get to here in a moment. And I want you to view the entire spreadsheet as the data frame. Okay, this is the entire spreadsheet like Excel or whatnot. Okay, and then going forward, every row or every column is known as a series. All right, that's your two new data structures. Okay, one is a data frame that represents the entire spreadsheet or data. And then we have all of our rows and columns, and those are known as a series. Now, when working with Python, what types of data do you already know? There should be 8. That's 8. Right, we have strings, integers, floats, booleans, lists, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. Right, those are 4 data structures and 4 basic data types. Now, I'm introducing you to 2 more, which is a data frame and a series, as well as the Pandas data types. Okay, now there are 2 more, but the most common ones we're going to see here are these 5. An object is just text, or it could be text mixed with numbers or non-numeric data, right? Int, integer, float, decimal. Date time is a date time, and a Boolean is true or false. All right, so when you're exploring your data, you are going to see these types of data. All right, so takeaways: data frame is the entire spreadsheet, a series is a row or a column. Now let's look at that, because most of the time we're working with a CSV file. Before we get to that stage, right, we need to import pandas, and this is the most common syntax you're going to see. So at the top of the code, we have our import pandas as. Now, you've probably used as before, but this is essentially just a way to give what you're importing, pandas, a nickname. So instead of having to type pandas everywhere in your code, I only have to type PD. Right? So it's abbreviation. This is the nickname that I'm referring to pandas as. You could call this anything: airplane, applesauce, monkey. It doesn't actually matter. Okay, but this is the standard syntax that you're bound to see, and this is what I'm going to use here for the episode, the series. Okay, now when we're loading a data set, okay, I am creating a data frame. This is another shorthand that you're going to see. You could call this data frame, but in other code files and other videos, when you're working with it, you're going to see DF. And this just stands for data frame. Now, what is a data frame? Well, remember, it's the entire data set. It's a spreadsheet. It's an Excel file. That's really what it is behind the scenes. Right? We can use the nickname that I specified before, PD, and Pandas has the method readCSV. Okay, they have other ones too, but most commonly the data we're working with is a CSV file, and that's what I'm going to use here. And then inside we just drop the name of the CSV file. So everything in the CSV file is now represented and held in our DF, our data frame. Now, what is a CSV file? Well, CSV means comma separated values. And here, if I have one on the screen, this is a CSV file of just YouTube data, okay? And I do have it color-coded. So most of the time it won't be color-coded. I just have an extension on Visual Studio which allows me to color-code it, so it's a bit easier to read. Now, remember, I have rows and I have columns, but that's really just a series of data. This entire CSV file, this is our data frame. So when I load a data frame, this is what it's loading behind the scenes. But I mean, come on, besides the color coding I have here, it's annoying to read. It's hard to read. That's where Pandas comes in. We can ask questions and we can answer questions using Pandas or other data analytical libraries, right? So if I go back very quickly, if I want to load this data set, okay, this is the command we're doing. Okay, df pd read CSV, dropping in whatever your CSV file is called. Okay, so your data frame is really the entire data set here that you've loaded. Great, so some general things I like to do once I load the data. So once we have a data frame, these are 4 Pandas methods that are going to allow you to just explore the data before you dive into it. Okay, so df, remember, this is our data frame. And I can link our data frame to these 4 methods. Info is the most common one we're going to use to just see what columns do we have in our data, right? This is just going to return basic information about each column in your data set, as well as the type of data that you're working with. Now, if I want to get the first 5 rows, or the last 5 rows of our data set, I can use head and tail. The head of our data, the tail of our data. And this automatically returns the first 5 rows or the last 5 rows. Now, if you wanted the first 10 rows, you would just put an integer as the argument for head or tail, right? But this is automatically 5 rows, and then anything more, you can specify the number you want. And the last one, describe, is pretty useful. Okay, this is going to describe the data and give you a larger summary, right? So info is very basic. What is the name of your columns? How many columns do you have? What is the data type? Describe is describing the data you're working with. It's gonna return to you generalized indicators that are within your data frame.
So when you run describe, it's actually going to give you a whole boatload of things to look at, right? This is like when I call the describe method, I'm going to get all of this stuff here, right? Count how many non-empty values do we have? We can get the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum of all of our data, the maximum, as well as all of the percentiles. Okay, so these are the 4 most common methods that you're going to use when you first load your data set. All right, now before I dive into filtering, let's jump into VS Code, fire this up, and jump into the action. Put these to work, and I'm going to guide you guys right into filtering with Pandas. Here we are in VS Code. All right, so I have these 6 scenarios, but before we dive into filtering and exploring these, let's just touch on the basics, right? When I get new data, what do we want to do with it? We want to prepare ourselves for the type of data we're going to be working with. And I have a data CSV file. I'll link this below, okay? Anytime you guys want data to practice with, I highly recommend Kaggle. Okay, Kaggle, tomato. I'm going to link that right there, okay? And this is the data we're working with. Now, it is data for the largest cities in the world, but there's only 802 in here. Okay, so not every city is going to be in here, right? But this is just the largest cities. And this is a CSV file, right? So, I mean, it's readable. It's partially readable because it's a smaller data set, but then I also have color coordination turned on. Now, the first row are the headers. Okay, so I'm going to go with green. This is the name of the column, so country. And then the value within the column is like Japan, India, China, all the way down. That's the items within that column. Now, pop quiz, what type of data is this right here? Object, right? An object is a text value in Python. Okay, what is this type of data? Int 64, and our last one would be float 64. Okay, so let's start exploring this data. Let's go over to our main. Okay, I'm going to come up top here. Remember the way that we're going to import. I'm going to say import pandas as PD. That is the nickname. Okay, once again, I could call this anything. Airplane. Okay, but standard practice, PD is short for pandas. Now that we have this, we need to load and create a data frame. So I'm just going to put here for you guys, create a data frame, right? And what we can do is say df, that represents our data frame, is equal to pd.readCSV. Okay, let me go back actually. Read, you can see other things we can read here, right? Read Excel, read table, read JSON, okay, read HTML, right? But the most common one we're going to do is read CSV. Inside there, as a string, I'm going to put the name of my CSV file, so data.csv. Now, everything in this file is now held as df. Okay, so let's start to explore this. Okay, I'm going to print these off now. Okay, let me give one line of space. I'm a big fan of spacing just for readability. Okay, let's get the basic info. So how do I do that? I just want to know the column names, the types of data. Well, I can say df.info. Okay, and then while I'm here, I'm going to get the info. Let's just get the first 5 lines. Tail. Let's do 8, right? It's to showcase that I can put a number inside there. This will give me the first 8 rows. Remember, if you don't put this, it's automatically 5 rows. So I'll say 8. Let's run our code. Cool. Look at that. So let me open this up a bit bigger for us. All right, so this initial part here is from our info. Okay, you can see the columns that we have here, and this is just your ID. Okay, and then here's really all the columns that we're going to be working with. Okay, so you can see that in column 1, I have the city, 2, country, population, 2024, etc. Right? And then D type, this is the data type. So you should familiarize yourself with this because as you're working with it, right, you need to know what types of data that you're working with. And this is a quick way to show us, right? So we have 3 int64s, we have a float, and we have 2 objects in there. That's our text, right? And then I wanted to get the first 8. Oh, I said tail, right? So I don't know if I said head or tail previously there, but this represents the last 8 of the data set, right? So these are the smaller cities within the data set. I've never heard of the city in China, Panjihua. Have you heard of that? Right? And we can just reverse that. So if I take head, and I just put head in there now, okay? Run that again, give it some time, there you go. Then it does the exact opposite. So here are the first 8. Remember, Python starts on 0. That's why we only see the 7. 0 counts as 1. So according to this data set, Tokyo is the largest city in the world, right? Population is 30, wow, that's a lot. 37 million in 2024. And it actually has not really changed much. You can see it's actually a negative growth ever so slightly, but we know that, sorry, Japan, you are in population decline. Delhi is really catching up there. Look at that, 33.8 million. All right. Now, what was the other method that I taught you guys to describe your data? All right, let me turn this off. I'm going to turn off head. We will use describe though. So I'd come down here, df describe. All right, and this just gives us a bunch of information back about our data. Run it again. Okay, so there we go. So your info's up here. I like to keep that. We have the count, right? There's 801 cities in there, all right? And we have all these values. We have the mean, okay? We have the standard deviation, the minimum number in there, the maximum number in there, all right? So the maximum city looks like it's growing at 0.05% a year, right? The minimum is actually declining, okay? So all this can be really valuable information to see the scope of your data, right? Where are you going to be starting with this data? Where are you going to be ending? So these are the methods, right? I even put back up here. We have, I'm going to do this backwards, I guess, tail. We'll say 5. These are the 4 methods that you can use to really start to explore your data. I don't even have to put 5. Right, so at the start, you get new data. This is a great place to begin. Okay, so you've explored your data. Let me take you guys quickly into data filtering. Right, I have all these scenarios, all these questions. How can we answer these scenarios using Pandas to filter our data? Let's check it out. All right, legends. So we've walked into Pandas, right? We've explored what kind of data that you're going to be working with. And you can see that I have data surrounding populations of global cities. All right, and I walked you guys through just exploring the basics. Now we're going to jump into how you can filter data, because let's face it, the data set you're working with is huge. You ultimately want to create mini data sets of filtered data that you can get more specific with, right? So let's look at how you can choose a column, right? Remember, df represents our data frame. Let me move me up here. Okay, so we have a few things here. Now, all of these methods that I have linked, these are just Python methods. All right, they're Python functions. They're not from Pandas, but I can apply Python, because we're coding in Python, to these. Now, I can take my data frame and I use the square brackets. And inside there, I put the name of the column I want to target. Right, so this is a series of data. I could target the entire column for population, and I could get the minimum within that column. Vice versa, I could get the maximum, I could get the average, or I could get the median, right? That's like the in-between point of all of our data, right? Now, remember that we're working with different types of data, so mean and median, that is always going to return a float number, all right? Now, this might look familiar. Okay, so you should be comfortable with data structures in Python. We have 4. We have lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. Well, this almost looks like a dictionary. If you imagine df as the dictionary, square brackets, the column name is like the key, right? Because in order to access the value from a Python dictionary, dictionary key unlocks a value. Well, dictionary key, this unlocks the value of the entire column, okay? So, yeah, we can apply these basic Python functions, but how can I really filter the data within that column? Well, we need to create a condition, just like a conditional statement, but a condition in Pandas. So for data filtering, we need to filter our data and only include the data where we want. So in my example here, I am creating an entirely new data set, entirely new data frame from the old one, right? And we're tapping into the original data frame, and then anything within the first set of square brackets, this is a condition, right? So it's just like saying in Python, if age is greater than 50, right? This is our condition in Pandas. So I want to create a new data frame anywhere where age is over 50. Okay, so I'm taking our original data frame, we're targeting a column. This is a column, a series within our original data frame, and we're specifying our condition. Okay, so this is our conditional statement. And as I mentioned before, right, Pandas is just like a Python dictionary. If I have a dictionary called myDict with a key and a value, if I want to unlock the value, dictionary key unlocks, value. Okay, so pause this, look at this, all right? It's really just a condition. That's what we're doing to apply a filter to our data. Now I have a new data frame called newDF. But what if I want to take this one step further? Okay, so now I have a new data frame. It's called newDF. And this new data frame is where all the data for people over 50 is held. What if now I want to get their score? Let's say they took a test and I want to get the score from all the people over 50. Well, I have a new data frame. So now that I have a new data frame, you can choose another column within this new data frame, right? So score equals newDF, and I could target the score column. Right, so score is also a new data frame. This represents the score column within that conditionalized group. Right, now you won't see this as much because more commonly we can break this down. I'm going to do that for you guys. But additionally, we could just put it in one single line. Right, so we have our original data frame. The first thing we want to do is create a condition. Right, so I want to choose everyone who is over the age of 20. Once I have everyone over the age of 20, then I want to get the column within that group for score. Right, so this score is a column within our data, and I'm only getting the score for people over the age of 20. So once I have this column, I could apply a Python function. Right, so I can get the average score for everyone over 20. All right, so that's the basics of data filtering. Now, those were those scenarios. Let's jump into VS Code, and I'm going to go through 6 scenarios that I made for you guys to showcase data filtering. Buckle up, let's get it. All right, I'm going to do this one by one. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these off, okay? It's just to keep you guys on track, right? To be able to see what's happening without all this gibberish happening in the terminal. So let's start with scenario 1. I'm going to start easy and get incrementally harder. So I want to find all the cities with a population greater than 20 million. Right? So how can I apply a filter to that to find that? So I'm just going to create like a variable. This represents a new data frame ultimately. I'm going to say large cities. Okay, so this is a new data frame. So I'm going to take my existing data frame, which is DF, and we are going to create a condition. What do you think the condition is going to be? Well, population greater than 20 million. That is the condition, right? If only I could copy and just paste that there. We can't quite do that, okay? But that's our condition. So what I want to do here is I'm going to target our column. So DF, we can now choose a column. And if we check our data CSV file, this is the name of the entire column. So I could just copy this, and we're going to drop that in there as a string. So where that column is greater than 20 million, that's really it. So let's see here. I'm going to put cities larger than 20 mil. And then on the outside here, we're going to say large cities. All right. This is your first filter. This is your condition. Let's run it. Let's see which ones are larger than 20. Cool. Look at that. We got 9. Right? There's 9 cities here. Okay, that's pretty good. So Tokyo, Delhi, Shanghai, Dhaka, Sao Paulo, Cairo, Mexico City, Beijing, and Mumbai. Right? With the Mumbai at 21.6 million, and as we said previously, 37.1 mil for Tokyo. All right. So I created a condition with some logic, right? We're using our logical operator there. Right? So let's change that. Let's do slightly different, same practice. You should get scenario 2 in no time. So I'm gonna turn this off, the print part. How do I find the largest cities in Vietnam? Okay, well, let's create a new data frame, Vietnam, DF. What column do I want to select? Well, I want to select the country, right? And what country do I want? Well, where the country is equal to Vietnam. Okay, and I believe the countries are capitalized, so that is important, right? So now if I just print off here, same thing. I'm going to say largest cities in Vietnam, and we are going to put in our new data frame of Vietnam. What do you think they are? If you're familiar with geography, list them out, okay? This is where I currently live, so I got these ones down. There we go. There are, what is this? 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Of the largest ones, okay? Now, Saigon and Hanoi, obviously the 2 biggest, all right? But we have Can Tho, Hải Phòng, Da Nang, and Bien Hoa. And these are going to be the largest ones within Vietnam. So you can see that previously we were getting the entire column that's over 20 million. But this time I'm targeting a country, and I only want the country where it's Vietnam. So this is a new data frame which holds all the cities we output there. Pretty cool. Okay, let's take it up a notch now. Okay, so that's basic filtering. Okay, I'm gonna turn off my print. We will keep our data frames. Okay, scenario 3. Now this is a little different. We're gonna have to expand on this, right? Because there is more than one condition we need to check for. We want to find the cities in China that are growing in population in 2024. So what are my conditions going to be here? Well, the first one is I want to find cities in China, and then I need positive growth. So that's 2 things, right? 2 of these must be true for this new data set to be created. Ultimately. So I'm going to say like growing cities China. Okay. So this is going to be our new data frame. Let's access that. So what is the condition going to be? Well, it's going to be 2 conditions. So I'm going to wrap these in a parenthesis here. Now, the first condition, DF, is going to be our country, right? So anywhere our country is equal to China. Okay. Now, outside of that, all right, I'm going to say and. Right? So what is the other condition we're checking for here? Try and do it. Okay. We want to find where the growth rate is greater than 0. Okay, so growth rate is greater than 0. That's a positive trend, and we are in China. Okay, so both of these must be true. So I'm just going to say here, growing cities in China. And then we can drop in our new data frame, growing cities in China. Let's run it. Let's see which ones are on the up and up, but it's probably going to be a lot of them, right? Because, I mean, China's growing like crazy. Yeah, okay, look at that. So there are so many that it did not list them all. It gave me the first 5, and it gave me the last 5, okay? And this is what happens when there's so many of that. Right. So you can see here, right, Shanghai is growing at a 2% rate. And what's the smallest one we got here? 164, 147. Shenyang, Shanxi, right? That's growing at 0.14% or 0.14%, excuse me. Okay, so we've created a new data frame based on 2 conditions. All right, so I hope you guys are seeing how data filtering can now take effect. All right, I'm going to give you guys some practice work after we're done here. All right, I'm going to burst through these last three. Okay, so total population of the largest cities in India. Well, okay, that's easy. So let's say cities, India. Let's take our data frame. Okay, let's take this. And what are we, oh, not curly brackets. What are we looking for here? Well, the first one is really country. And we're going to say country is equal to what? India. And I should not be inside that. India. Okay, so this can be done in two ways. This is a new data frame, specifically targeting all the data for India, all the data with that. Okay, so now I want to calculate the total population. So what I could do is I could do total pop, and we are just going to take the cities in India, and we want to get the population, and I believe it's 2024, okay? And I want to get the sum of that. Okay, so that's done in two rows. So this is a new data frame. I take that new data frame and I target a column within that data frame that I can apply the sum to. So I'm going to show you another way to do this. So sum of largest in India. What did I call that? Total pop. Okay, so I'm going to run this and I'm going to show you the other faster way to do this that I showed you in the slides. Okay, boom, right there. Remember, this is the cities. Obviously, the population of India is significantly larger than this, but with all the major cities in our data set, 262 million. Right? Now, I did that in two lines. Another one you're going to see is if I just remove this. Okay, so this here is just targeting India. Now that I've targeted India, I could choose a column and I could apply the sum. Right? So here I'm just going to change it back to cities India. We're still going to see the same output. All right? So this would be the way to do it in a single line. We create the initial condition. Where this condition is met, I want to choose the column and then we can apply a function on. Okay, brilliant. All right, two more guys. Scenario 5. Find cities, I butchered experiencing, find cities experiencing a population decline and calculate their growth median. Okay, so let's call this like decline median. Okay, so how do we first, we want to get the places experiencing a decline. Okay, so let's target everywhere where our growth rate, so I'm going to say growth rate, drought. Growth. Okay, where the growth rate is less than 0. Now, within the growth rate of less than 0, I'm again going to get the growth rate. And what did I say? The median? We can just apply the median. Okay, so now instead of how I did it in two lines previously, okay, I'm doing it in one line here, and we're just going to say, what did I say there? Decline median cities. Does that make sense? Decline median. Okay, just like so. Let's find out our findings here. Okay, so the median, remember, I'm finding this is the median. So to be fair, that's not too bad. I mean, that's declining, right? But I thought it would be worse than that. Okay, not too shabby, right? Okay, this brings us to our final scenario. Okay, so scenario 6. Okay, pause the video. Pause the video. Please try this one on your own. Okay, so I gave you some time there to pause it. We want to find the growing cities in China and calculate the minimum population they had. So this one is longer, okay, because, well, we want to create a new data frame and then we want to target a column within that data frame. What is my condition going to be? Well, it's actually two conditions, all right? We need the growing cities and they need to be in China, okay? Once we have growing cities and in China, then we can find the minimum population they had in 2023. Okay, so I'm going to say min pop China. Let's get our data frame. Okay, so I'm going to put parentheses here. What is the first condition going to be here? Well, the first condition, parentheses. What is the first condition? I'm going to say df. We're going to say country, right? Anywhere the country is China. We're going to say and, right? What is the other condition here? Well, df, we want to get the growth rate. Okay, so anywhere the growth rate is greater than 0, because that means it's on the up and up. All right, so now I have our new data frame, minimum population in China, that is going up. Okay, and then we want to get the minimum of that. Okay, so I'm going to tap in here, and what column do I want? Well, I want to get this, population 2023. So we're going to take that, we're going to apply that filter to the column, and then we're going to say the min. That's it. That's a single line. So we have two conditions. They both must be met, and then we can choose this column within any data where these conditions are met. So when I print off here, let's just say min pop in China for 2023. Okay, and we're going to do min pop China. Whoops. Run your code for scenario 6, guys. Voila, look at that. Minimum population in China for 2023. This is our findings. So the city that is growing, that has currently the least population, has 733,000 people. Guys, okay, take a minute. Look through the scenarios that we've just done together, okay, and really go back to the slides that I had. Okay, remember that we target the data frame and then we have a condition. Sometimes we even have two conditions. This returns to us a new data frame where all of those conditions are met. When we have a new data frame, I could choose a column within that data and do stuff with it.
Well, there you have it, guys. That is a basic introduction to pandas. And I know how overwhelming this is because I've been there. And there are certain areas that I still feel overwhelmed by this. So the content I create here is meant to break it down for you, all right? And we're going to cover areas and explore areas that will hopefully help you grow in this space. Drop a like, all right? Drop a comment. And if you're not already subscribed, please do help me out. Hit that subscribe button, okay? Now, we brushed over the data cleaning part of it. That could be a whole nother episode in reality, which we can do at a further stage. But for today's episode, we wrapped up the core basics of pandas, as well as introducing you to the next step of filtering out your data. Well, guys, that's all for this episode of Code with Josh. I will see you next time. Until then, Python crew,